Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So back in November of 2023 when the master license is released, I went through and did the gold medal guides for each individual license test. I was then meant to put a compilation together of each single one of those licenses in a nice handy single video. However, I was completely burnt out, it completely slipped my mind, so here it finally is almost a year later. So apologies for that one, but I did finally do it. I'll have timestamps down below in the description for each single license, so if there's any you're struggling on, it should be down there below. Again, all the commentary is recorded from that time, so this is going to be it from me live today. But yeah, massive thank you to all of my channel members for supporting me. Massive thank you to you guys watching. Hopefully this guide does help you out if you are stuck on any. Take care guys, peace. The Mazda B1 up first. This is going to be in the Mazda 3 for starting and stopping one on wet tracks. Four-wheel drive car, this one, not too difficult to be totally honest. However, this was probably one of the licenses that actually took me the longest out of all of them, mainly because I'd either be braking too soon or braking just that slightly bit too late. So I'm going to slow it down right here where you need to be braking. As you can see, right before that little flashing board on the right hand side which says 200, you want to brake as hard as possible, work your way down the gears, and you should be able to get the car to stop right on time. 18.288 and a gold medal for that one. B2 up next. This time it's starting and stopping 2 on wet tracks, rear wheel drive, a lot more horsepower, and for this one I'm going to slow down pretty much the majority of this clip because it's easier to explain as we go along. So traction control at 1. As you can see, straight away we're going to let the car rev up. However, you're going to notice that it may bog down or attempt to try and spin up the rear wheels just far too much. So short shifting, fully advise that one. As you can see, you're going to see the car start to slip when we short shift to third. So it's all about just trying to keep it in the right direction. And then once again, you're looking for just as you get to the 100 boards. At this point, slam the brakes on, bring the car down the gears, and you should be able to stop right in time to be able to get the gold. As you can see, I got a 17.687 with the gold being a 17.780. So well within the time, within about a tenth. Again, you should be able to get that one spot on. It's mainly about keeping the control of the car when you first start the license. B3 up next. As you can see, this time we have cornering basics 1, this time using the little K car, that is the Honda S660. Now you can take this one pretty much flat out and the game will advise you to, and well, so do I. So move yourself all the way over to the left and get yourself up on that curve. Now I'm going to slow the footage down because you're looking for the 50 board. Begin to turn in at that point, get yourself up and onto the curb, and this should give you a pretty nice angle to go out nice and wide and accelerate all the way to the finish. Relatively simple, this one. You shouldn't have too much of a problem getting the gold for this. So we're going to cross the line with a 17.122, giving us the gold medal for B3. B4 now, and we have the Honda S2000, once again cornering basics 2. Exact same as before, but much more horsepower and a full rear wheel drive vehicle. So here we go. I'll once again slow it down, and it's definitely going to change up where your braking marker is because you will have to brake this time, as well as where you'll need to turn in. So bring yourself to the left, look for the 100 board, lift off, brake nice and steady, turn in at the 50, lift off, slight throttle input if needed. Again, we're going to start putting full throttle there just as we're about to exit, and this should give you enough room to bring it out nice and wide and accelerate down to the finish line. You should be able to get the gold on this one. Definitely one of the toughest tests of the bunch, just mainly because you go from a relatively slow car to a car that feels a lot more powerful. Okay, so on to B5. This time we have the Silvia Spec R for cornering intermediate 1. The first turn at the Red Bull Ring, this one. Quite a tricky one, and I'm going to take you straight through it. So you're going to begin right up the main straight. What you want to do is begin to head towards the left. You can run quite a bit of the curb. Don't run too much or it will fail you. When you see the 150 board, just after that, lift, brake, kind of the midpoint between the 150 and the 100. brake nice and hard, bring it across. Now realistically you can kind of run over sort of the nice little bump in the curb there on the right hand side, but even on the safe side it's quite a lenient test and you should be able to get this one relatively easy. I expected this one to be much harder. 16.290 for this one. Again, a lot more lenient than I expected it to be. You shouldn't really have too much of a trouble with this one. B6 up next, this time at Spa. It's going to be turn 1. Can be quite a tricky turn to get right. We're using the 911 Carrera RS 964 from 1992. Not the easiest of cars to drive. However, this one once again is rather quite lenient. So let's have a look at how we should get this one done. So beginning off, you're going to come over where the sort of start finish straight is going to be. What you're looking for on the left hand side here is just after the 100 board, lift, brake, bring it down, bring the brakes on really hard, turn in, lift, let the car rotate, get as much onto that curb and as close to that barrier as possible, and again bring yourself out onto the curb, not too much or actually you'll start bogging down. Short shift to retain your grip, and there you go. Nice and easy, this one, rather quite simple. 16.769 for this one, only just beating it, but again much more lenient for a rather, you know, scruffy license test there. Definitely not the highlight of the bunch, but by no means got it done. B7 up next. This time we're using their brand new 190E. This is corner and intermediate free. Turn 1 at Deep Forest Raceway, pretty much a throwback to the license tests of old, and if you've done it there, although the layout's kind of changed a little bit, you should have a relative idea of how to tackle this one. So here we go. Older vehicle, comfort tires, brakes are not going to be as good as a modern car, but check here. So right hand side, brake just as the curb's there, giving yourself plenty enough time to get the car slowed down. Work your way through the gears, down the gears into gear 2. Again, just let the car sort of roll a little bit, a bit of throttle control there as you can see, and then start accelerating a bit more on exit. Try and aim for the wide bit of the curb, don't take too much or else it will kind of end the license test there, and you should have plenty of time to get this one done. 17 seconds, 0.613 for this one. Again, only just beating the time. It wasn't a perfect one, but it did manage to get the gold. Relatively easy, that one only took around about 2 goes. B8 up next. This time we've got the RX-8. We're going to be taking on Suzuka circuit for consecutive corners intermediate 1. Now this one again relatively easy, but definitely can be tricky if you're not used to how the road cars feel. Most of the time we're going to be taking this in race cars, so definitely a little bit different feeling. What you're looking for here on the left, as you can see, is just before the 50 board. Brake, lift, let the car turn in, get yourself up over that curb and then nice and wide onto this curb, and just where the curb ends, brake, lift once again, up over the curb, and then angle it so you're exiting the corner just slightly on the curb. Don't hit it too much or you will bog down and lose plenty of time. 17 seconds, 0.941 for this one. Just kind of closer north, just under a tenth to the actual gold target time. Wasn't perfect by no means, but definitely got that one done relatively easily. So we're on to B9 now. This time we've got the Sierra RS 500 Cosworth for consecutive corners intermediate number 2. This time at Road Atlanta. So this one I would say is probably easier than the previous one. It's just the final right-hander that is, you know, able to catch you out. So full acceleration, lift, brake, then turn in, let the car rotate, so lift off absolutely everything. Little bit of throttle control, bring the car out nice and wide just onto this curb here, and then sort of brake at the midpoint of that curb. Turn in, get the right hand tires up over that curb. Once again, throttle control on exit, and then try not to get yourself on that curb. I've noticed that it either risks you spinning out or you will bog down an absolute ton. So there we go. 20.707 for that one with a gold time of 20.770. Only just, but again, these are designed to be very close. Not too bad, that one. Let's move on to the final B license test. Okay, so final test time, this time with B10. Now, To be honest, I'm going to be totally honest here. This is made more awkward mainly because of the car you're given. You're given the prehistoric Ford Roadster, a very, very cool car and one that was kind of lost to time due to a glitch in the Legends dealer. This will be your reward vehicle for completing. Now I'm going to slow pretty much the majority of this down. So as you move over to the right hand side, bring the brakes in just before the free marker. Brake really, really hard and then start controlling those brakes. Then bring a little bit of revs in, let the car rotate, little bit of throttle control, and sort of try and aim yourself around to clip this curb here and then start applying more throttle. However, we're not quite done there, so we're at full throttle right now. Only, I think, 3 gears in this vehicle. Short shifting to keep the grip, looking for the 2 board, then brake just after it, bring the car in, again just sort of using those brakes and lifting off, then onto the throttle control, try and get it as close to the right as possible without like hitting the sausage curb there, try not to bog down on the curb and across the line. We got that one in a 30.505 with a target gold time of 30.750. This will give you all of the gold medals for the Master B license. So there we go, we've obtained the National B Master license. For all bronze we get a 6-star roulette part ticket, not too great of a reward. However, we do get the very cool reward of the Ford Roadster, a car that was pretty much lost to time due to a glitch in the Legends dealership, is now yours through this means of completing all gold license tests for Master National B. So up first we've got Master A1. This is going to be Racing Line Basics 1. We're also going to have the exact same layout for the next license. However, one's front wheel drive, one's rear wheel drive. So we've got the 208 GTI here. In terms of this one, to be honest, it took a couple of goes at most. The main kind of concern you've got is kind of as you enter the left-hander is the braking of the vehicle, and it's sort of, you know, pushing the front end down. So you're going to see sort of the end of the barrier there before it sort of dips in more. Use that as a braking zone, brake rather quite heavily, and then just lift off, use your throttle control, get yourself up across the curbs. You can really sort of chew up the curbs here, and I do recommend it. It's very lenient on what will disqualify you and what won't. Again, then just kind of, you know, full power out of the right hander and literally do not lift. You should be able to give yourself enough momentum to get yourself up on the curb and literally be flat out to the finish. So we cross the line with a 26.423 and the gold medal for A1. Now A2, it's the exact rinse and repeat of A1. However, this time we're using a rear wheel drive car in the form of the RX-7. Once again, it's the exact same layout, so it's kind of the originals to give you a bit of a taster, and then it's going to give you a much more powerful and obviously rear wheel drive vehicle in the form of this RX-7. So it's going to change up how you're going to drive the car, but once again these same sort of basics apply. You kind of know the layout this time around, you just got to change how you drive the vehicle. So head over to the right hand side. Once again, when the barrier sort of, you know, kind of caves back in on itself, just brake, allow the rear end to kind of slightly kick out, get yourself up across the curb. This was by no means a clean run at all. And then full throttle and lift onto the right hander, get yourself right up over the curb. Again, you may feel the rear end start to kick out. At that point, just, you know, start using a bit of throttle control to bring it back in, and then you can be flat out all the way to the finish and then bring yourself across the line with this one 25.368 and the gold medal once again. So it's going to change up a little bit now. Those two are very copy paste, just like we had with license National A as well, with the stopping and starting. So we're going to move on to the Julia from 2020 for Master A3, which is going to be hairpins at Autopolis. Now you're going to have this one as a little bit of a different run, so it's an uphill section followed by the hairpin and then a downhill acceleration out. So you're going to go up the hill as much as possible and then begin to look on the right hand side for these boards here. As you're going to see, I'm going to pick the middle board as sort of my braking marker. Bring the car in, brake really heavy, and then bring it up across onto the inside of the corner. You can chew up a lot of curb. Once again, it won't disqualify you, so feel free to run as much as possible. Bring yourself out wide and put the power down, and you should be all good to go. Great handling on this vehicle, rather straightforward. You should be able to get this one done with, you know, plenty of time to spare. 19.068 for that one. So let's move in to A4 next. So A4 I would say is the hardest of all of the A licenses. As you can see, it's on urban tracks. It's going to be a very enclosed environment at Tokyo Expressway using the very powerful Ferrari F12. So you're going to begin, you're going to move yourself all the way to the left hand side. Try not to even remotely scrape the wall or else it will disqualify you. That's where most of the challenge comes from. You can see this little sign up here. Use that as a braking marker. Slow the car down and then begin to lift. Then you're going to bring the throttle in rather quite slowly. I wouldn't absolutely go flat out, to bring your car nice and wide to prepare for the next corner. Then use the little markers on the tunnels as a braking marker. Bring yourself in and across, keep yourself as close as possible to this wall, and then angle yourself for this left-hander here. Now, you're going to need an almost sudden right-hand turn here. So as you can see, just use the throttle control to bring it over, balance it with the brakes, and then kind of, be on half throttle, ready to go as powerful as possible before braking and throttle control once again to bring you across to this left-hander. Definitely a difficult layout, and it's really quite difficult to explain. Took me most tries of all of these license tests. It's just very enclosed. The main thing you want to do is be fast, but also avoid those barriers in this really enclosed environment. So let's move on to A5. Very easy, this one, very simple. It's going to be on the brand new track Lake Louise, using a relatively straightforward vehicle in the form of the Focus RS. So snow driving beginner. The first time on the snow in terms of these license tests is going to be a few of these. Now, it's not necessarily the most difficult turn, and I really did quite botch it up, but I did manage to get away with it with plenty of time. It does seem that this sort of off-road snow driving is much more lenient in terms of your overall time. So look on your left hand side, use your brake markers, bring it all the way across. I recommend revving it out and try and get in a nice wide angle. As you can see though, my car sort of got all its grip back and it didn't give me the perfect angle. However, I did get a decent enough exit, and I'm going to cross a line with a 17.457, only just beating the goal time. But like I said, the main thing you want to do is slide it out nice and wide and get yourself a good run out of the corner, and you should get this one nice and easy. Got this one on my first try. Again, very lenient in terms of the overall times on the off-road sections. On to A6 next, another tough one. This time we're using the Genesis G70. We're going to be using it at Grand Valley Highway 1 through a rather awkward section. As you can see, this is Racing Line Intermediate 1. There's going to be 3 of these on the bounce, so yeah, get yourself ready. I would say this is definitely the most difficult of all 3 of them though. So the Genesis, it's a 4-wheel drive vehicle, I believe, so it's rather quite easy. It's not going to kind of break away from you. The main thing is that the sports hards and how heavy this car is really don't kind of make a great mix. So going into the right hander, I recommend lifting and then sort of use throttle control to point your car just onto the sand and give yourself a nice angle for this left hander here. Try and cut out as much as possible without getting disqualified. Just before the 300 board, brake really heavily, bring yourself down the gears. I recommend you can either drop it into first and short shift to second, or just keep it in second like I did here. Then use your throttle control on exit. Don't go too wide because it will disqualify you if you go over that white line there. Full acceleration out and you should be able to get this one. Again, quite a tricky one, maybe not as difficult as the Ferrari F12, but definitely in terms of being a heavy vehicle on not the fastest of tires, it was made more difficult by that. On to Master A7 next, Racing Line Intermediate 2. This time we're using the BMW M3 at Dragon Trail Gardens. Now this one here, I believe I did get first time. It wasn't too difficult. Obviously rear wheel drive car this time around, a little bit more sketchy in terms of its handling. However, to be honest, I feel like it was a lot more lenient than it should have been with the overall time. So bring it over to the left. Then where the sort of sand meets, just before that, you want to brake heavy, whip it round to the right, get yourself up on the curb, keep heading to the right hand side, and then once again braking zone for the left. Bring yourself up over the curb if you can. If you can't, just do what I did here. Run it wide onto the curb. It's not going to disqualify you. And then flat out there to the finish. Rather quite an easy one. Again, quite lenient to say. Absolutely butchered one of the apexes there. But an 18.428 will get myself the gold. As you can see, gold time 18.450. Moving on next to Racing Line Intermediate 3. This is Master A8 with the R33 GTR from 1997 at Lake Maggiore. Now, the kind of main issue you've got, well, not issue you've got here, should I say, the main thing you've got here is 4-wheel drive. This car is rather quite decent on its handling. The main thing really is the throttle control. So head all the way over to the right, get yourself as close to the curb as possible, brake, lift, and then just bring throttle control in, get yourself up over the curb. Again, it won't disqualify you. It's really quite lenient with the curbs themselves. A little bit more throttle over this curb, and then you're going to get into the left-hander and lift just slightly before bringing in the power once again. Don't go too wide here, or else it will disqualify you. As you can see, if you're going to get yourself into that grass or on the barrier, it's going to be an instant failure. However, full throttle at that point all the way to the finish, and you should be able to get this one nice and easily. So cross the line with a 25.168 with a gold target time of a 25.200. So again, rather quite lenient. Wasn't the best runs. I was being more kind of aware of the sort of lines on that final left-hander. So Master A9 is going to be cornering intermediate 1 on wet tracks, this time using the Porsche 911 Carrera RS. Not the best of mixers, however, if you've run Tokyo Grand before, then you pretty much know what to expect here. I feel like I've been kind of trained well for this one. Took me a couple of goes. The main issue was sort of slipping on the left-hander before you have to go absolutely flat out. So look for the 200 board, brake just kind of between that and the 200 to 150 board. Brake as heavily as possible. Try not to scrape the wall or else it will disqualify you. Bring yourself down the gears. I recommend getting it into first gear, get the car rotating inwards. You don't necessarily have to run as deep as I do here. Again, I was almost disqualified there, but then I short shifted up, and that's going to cause the rear end to kick out. However, we do have plenty enough grip. Try and avoid the curb there on the left. As you can see, I only slightly touched it, and it managed to rotate the rear end out. So short shifting there to retain grip, absolutely flat out, rather quite lenient. Like I said, the main tricky part is actually the fact of the curbs are extremely wet, and it is going to cause the car to slip out. If you can, try and avoid that final left-hand curb, because it will kick your car out and there is a chance you're going to end up in the barrier. So let's move on to the final exam for this one. This is Master A10 using the Mercedes AMG GT Black Series. Once again, an autopolis, and it's going to be a fairly difficult string of corners here. So we're going to start off where we started off with where we ended with the hairpin at the downhill section. On your left-hand side, it's a relatively easy section. Just brake at the 100 board, bring the car in, get it up over the curb, get it out nice and wide, brake just as the curb ends there, bring it across to the right-hand side, up over the curb, accelerate upwards, and now this is where I'm going to slow it down, because this is where it can get rather quite awkward. Over to the left-hand side, run the curb, and then straight away turn to the right. You're going to be having to bring the brakes on here. As you can see, I'm just kind of, sort of tapping them to get the rear end to rotate. Again, sort of aim outwards and then back inwards, and try and get yourself as straight as possible for this section here. Throttle control, and then full throttle up over the curb. Once again, aiming out nice and wide. Bring the sort of throttle control back in and a bit of a lift. This should give you a nice angle for the left-hander. As you can see, though, I did end up breaking traction, and that's going to cause it to look a little bit awkward there, but we did manage to keep the car under control. Now, it's all about sort of balancing the brakes and the throttle control through here. If you overdo it, you're going to run wide into the gravel, and if you go too slow, then, well, you're going to lose plenty of time. On exit, full throttle up over the curb. Once again, just losing a bit of traction there, but managing to keep the car under control, and it's absolutely flat out to the line for a 48.409, with the gold target being a 48.480. Rather quite lenient with the time. It certainly wasn't my fastest run. I could definitely make up plenty of time on that one, but that is going to give us our National A Master license. For all bronze, you're going to receive a 6-star roulette engine ticket, which is rather quite a decent reward, and there's some decent engine swaps you can probably get with this one. However, for getting all of the gold, you are going to get a reward vehicle once again, and this time it's going to be in the form of, once again, the final exam vehicle, the Mercedes AMG GT Black Series that we've just used. A decent car, a very powerful road car, and probably the best of the AMG road going vehicles that we do have in the game. So 719 brake horsepower, 1500 kilogram turbocharged. It's an absolute beast, and definitely a worthy reward. Okay, so on to IB1. This is using the Ferrari GTO from 1984 at Monza for high-speed corners #1. Now, in terms of the overall gold time for this one, very lenient. I managed to get it my first try whilst absolutely buttering the run, which you're going to see here. So head over to the left, look for the boards on the left. At the 100 board, slam the brakes on as hard as you can. bring the car down the gears, and then you should realistically rotate inwards and then back out wide. However, I got a lot of slide at the rear. Obviously these comfort softs, a bit of a sketchy tyre in terms of trying to go as fast as possible, but as you can see, we managed to correct it, and we did manage to then just fully accelerate out across the line. So again, very lenient on the gold time for this one. I got a 22.001 with a gold time of 22.220. Okay, so on to IB2, once again high speed corners, this time with a ZR1C4 Corvette at Willow Springs, and perhaps the worst corner in the entirety of GT7. In terms of tips, it's really quite difficult what to advise you, considering I absolutely hate this corner and only got it first time by just absolute pure luck. I'll still slow the footage down and try and sort of have a look at what I did, but in all honesty, yeah, just take that one with a pinch of salt. I am not great at this corner. I absolutely hate it. So I went out wide. As you can see, I'm looking for the boards just before the 150, slam those brakes on, lift off, try and get the rear of the car to rotate inwards. Again, I definitely felt like I braked far too early, but I still managed to get the gold, bring the accelerator on, try and clip the inside there all the way to the outside, and then absolutely flat out to the finish. Again, a tough one for me. It's perhaps the worst corner in GT7 in my opinion. I really don't know what to advise you there, only just getting the gold, but again, a first time gold, getting this one done and out the way, I'm really not complaining. IB3 next. This one gave me a ton of problems. I'm not quite sure why. We're back on the snow for this one. Typically these have a lot more of a lenient time, but I was just massively struggling to get the power down correctly in this Subaru. So as you begin, just absolutely go for it. In terms of the torque distribution, I recommend either sort of 35-65 or 40-60. Again, look for the boards, and where the final board is on your left, begin to turn in. You want it to angle all the way outwards to give yourself a very nice and quick run out of this big bank turn. Turn one, I would say, is definitely the one where you need to try and be as consistent as possible to get as much time ticked off as possible. Full acceleration, then you're going to head to the right here. Now this part isn't too bad, but you've got a quite sharp left-hander just after, and you want to try and time it properly. So bring it down a gear, get the rear end to kick out, preferably not too much. As you can see, it caused me far too much slip when I went for the short shift. Just tapping the barrier there, but getting away with it, and then it is full acceleration up and across the line, flat out after that left-hander, and you should be all good for the gold. 35.840 for our gold, with a time of 35.910 as the target time. IB4 next, and the NSX Type R from 2002, as well as the Suzuka Circuit combination, proving to be an absolute pest in terms of licenses. If you remember day one of GT7, you'll probably remember this track and this car combination for the hairpin turn. Now we're at the S's. It's going to be maintaining third gear into the left. Then when you head to the right, you want to downshift to second, a short shift back to third, and retain the grip. This is where it changes up. I'm going to slow it down here because of it. Keep it in third gear. You want to be getting up across that curb, but you want a much better angle than I got here. I just got too much slip on the rear, and it ended up going out wide. Downshift to second and short shift back to third, but once again the rear end is going to slip. We're just going to catch it to keep it inside those track limits, and then once you get to this left hander, begin turning in nice and early and try and loop yourself up and around. So maintaining third gear, we're going to head out wide again, slip at the rear of the vehicle, and then we're just going to absolutely try and power through it all the way across the line. I had a ton of problems trying to do this one, and in the end only just got it. 29.590 for our gold medal. Okay, so halfway there, IB5 next, a Racing Line Expert 2 at Watkins Glen Long Course. So let's get straight into this one. Another one that I managed to crack out first time, I think mainly just by pure luck. So what you're looking to do is aim to the left hand side here and keep your eye on the little number boards. And as you can see, just after the 500, between sort of 400 to 300, you want to brake heavy, bring the car across the curb. You can make up a ton of time here doing such. Over the left curb, lift and angle it over this curb here, and then run up onto the right hand curb there. On exit, aim it out as wide as possible and begin to bring the car across to the right hand side. So you've got a long sweeping right hander here. Throttle control is essential, and then on exit you want to try and get out wide and accelerate as hard as possible. As you can see here, we've put the power all the way down, just getting onto the curb. Don't go over the white line or else it will sort of disqualify you. Brake at the 200 board really hard, turn the car in, lift, and then we're going to accelerate again and try and aim out wide. So as close to this left-hander as possible. You can chop up a bit of the curb if you want to. Start bringing the acceleration back in and up onto the curb on the right-hand side here. Now head over to the left, look at the Gran Turismo boards on the left. Use the second one or the middle one as your braking marker. Brake nice and hard, lift off, let the car turn in, and then use throttle control to rotate the car through the right hander. Once again, this one's going to go uphill, so try and run out as wide as possible. Full acceleration on exit, and this is going to finish up the Watkins Glen IB5. Overall, bit of a lengthy one, but not too difficult once you kind of know this section of the track, and I absolutely love Watkins Glen. IB6 up next, and now we have the Cayman GT4 for Racing Light Expert 3 at Lake Major. Right, let's get into this one. It's, I guess, another one that's kind of stretched out and a bit lengthier, but really not too difficult. The car we're using here has insanely good handling. So left-hander here, you just want to lift a little bit to get the car to rotate in as closest to the curb as possible, and then lift once again for the right-hander. Get yourself up over the curb, out nice and wide. You can run onto the white curb there. Now, in between the 150 board, you want to be braking nice and heavy. Again, lift and let the car rotate in. Try and bring yourself up over the curb here on the right, and then begin to push yourself out wide up onto this curb here if possible. I got a little bit of a slip from the rear there, so I kind of missed where I wanted to head. We're going to turn inwards to the right hander, up over the curb, and then you want to aim it so that you don't end up going too wide, so you get a nice sort of straight full acceleration run out there. So there we go, a little bit of slip once again from the rear. Now where this curb begins, you want to get to around about halfway, brake nice and hard, down the gears, head left. You can chop up plenty of this curb, just don't go too far over. Go on the inside and then full throttle on exit to bring yourself out nice and wide and down the main start finish straight. You should be able to get this one not too difficult really. Again, the car that we're given is very, very good in terms of its overall handling and feeling. So we got this one actually spot on the time at 5:50, which is quite ridiculous. Master IB7 now with the MC20 at Spa. So I'm going to be totally honest, it's a bit of a blaggers car. What I mean by that is just kind of the way that it kind of has to be driven to get the most out of it is horrible. If you remember the sort of time trial that we had with this thing, I think it was at Bathurst a few months ago when it was first released. Yeah, it's just a weird car to drive. So I'm going to slow down the entire thing. At the 200 board, you want to absolutely downshift to first and then bring your gears back up. This seems to be the best way to get the most out of this car. So you go down to first to help with the braking, and then kind of short shift up the gears to maintain your grip as you go into the corner and out the corner. It's really quite bizarre how you have to work this car. Down to second, up to third, you want to be as close to the right hander as possible and then bring it out nice and wide. Bit of slip from the rear there, so just be mindful of that. Up to fourth, so we're really getting through the gears nice and early. Then the curb on the left just before, bring it down once again, get it into first and then start going up the gears. Getting the rear end kicking out in this car really isn't too much of a bad thing. It's kind of how you have to drive it, but you want to be short shifting to grab as much traction as possible almost instantly. So through the right hander, bring it out nice and wide, and then look on the right hander here, as you can see over to the right. Bring it down the gears into second, short shift to third just to maintain as much grip as possible, up onto the curb, massive slide there, so we go up to fourth to try and maintain that grip and across the line with a 39.823. It's a bizarre handling car and I'm not a huge fan of how it has to be driven. Okay, now into something a little bit easier. This is IB8, corner intermediate 2 on wet tracks using the M2 competition. Now, in terms of this event here, it's sort of coming towards the end of Suzuka. You're fighting more against the weather, I'd say, than the actual timer. It's all about just keeping control of the car. In all honesty, I'd just recommend short shifting, you know, not kind of overdoing it with the revs. The car's going to want to kick out. Again, not using traction. If you want to use it, it'll probably make this much easier. brake nice and early due to the wet weather and the sports hard compound. As you can see, we're going to miss the apex here and the car's going to be sliding out of control. We do manage to still get it up on the curb and try and retain as much grip as we possibly can, keeping it in third, drop it down to second to get the front end to turn in, and then you're going to see we're going to short shift back up to third, trying to get ourselves on the curb, but the rear end once again is going to begin to break away. So we short shift up to fourth to maintain the traction, bring it out nice and wide, and then carefully accelerate out of the corner and then up and across the line. Quite easy this one, you shouldn't have too much trouble getting this one done and dusted. Very lenient on the time, more against the weather. Okay, so on to IB9 now. We're back on the snow with Snow Driving Intermediate 2 using the rather quite bizarre choice of the Porsche 95987. As you can see, we've got the snow tyres on. Now, this one, again, you're kind of fighting more against the track than you actually are the timer. As you can see, there's a ton of bumps here that the Porsche is not going to like. Do not be full throttle as you begin. You will just end up flipping the car everywhere. It'll just sort of completely go wrong. As you can see though, the bumps are going to set you up quite awkwardly for the right-hander, so bring it out wide and then bring it nice and close inwards, short shifting again to maintain traction, drop a gear for the left-hander to bring the rear end out. As you can see, I really didn't get the best of runs here, but this is why I'm slowing it all down, and then on exit, short shift of course, and then full acceleration out for this kind of sweeping left-hander. It's not too tight, so you can pretty much be flat out if you need to be. So yeah, more against the track than you actually are against the timer for that one. Just be very, very mindful of the bumps, very lenient on the time. Okay, so final exam time once again with IB10 using the brand new LFA at Fuji International Speedway. I thought I was going to struggle here a lot more than any of these others, mainly because the last part of Fuji is really complex, really awkward, and obviously we're using a road car. However, it wasn't too difficult, but I'm still going to slow down the majority of this clip just to be able to kind of talk you through step by step what's going on. So brake just before that big sort of yellow billboard there. Bring it down the gears and aim in for the apex of this corner. You can really chop a lot of time off here, get it up over the curb and then short shift outwards. Straight away head left and chop this curb up here so you get a nice fairly straight angle. Once again able to kind of take a ton of curb. Now bring it out wide, and this is where it's going to get really awkward. Out to the head of the curb and then a short shift, or downshift should I say, bring it into the right with a bit of a short shift there to maintain your grip levels. Head up onto this curb here and now start heading out wide to the right hand side of the track. Bring it out in a big arch sort of way. Again, I'm going to downshift just to kind of get the car to kick out slightly. Bring it in and angle it all the way to the curb here. Again, you can take a lot more of it than you probably expect to if you do end up going that kind of deep in. Short shift to maintain traction, head out all the way to the left, and you want to try and give yourself a nice big run down the straight. So we're going to go out wide, just to kind of keep into this sort of dark coloured lines as you can see here. We're going to bring it in far too much to the inside. I'd honestly recommend just going a bit wider for a better angle and a better run out. Again, short shifting to maintain traction and then all the way to the finish. The main thing you're really fighting against there is the traction, and in all honesty, it's quite a difficult sector to really any track. We did manage to take the gold though relatively easily. So for full completion of International Master License B, we're going to get a 5-star roulette ticket for all of the bronze medals. However, in terms of the gold medal reward, we're going to get a much better reward this time around in terms of the overall, I guess, experience of vehicles and such. We're going to have the Lexus LFA. This is a brand new car to GT7 and you can earn it for free by completing International B. Okay, so International A up first. This is going to be tricky consecutive corners 1 at Road Atlanta using the Corvette C7 ZR1. Overall, this one was a fairly easy one. It wasn't too difficult. It didn't take me too many goes to get this one done, and I'm going to take you as usual step by step. So to begin with, head over towards the left of this section, brake just as the sort of tarmac appears on the left away from the grass. Get the car to turn in, Then bring the throttle back in, run yourself up nice and wide towards the curb here. You can pretty much get yourself at full throttle for a split second before lifting, braking once again, not too harshly though. Bring yourself over to the left. You can cut up over this curb here. You can actually take pretty much the entire curb without being disqualified, so use that to your advantage for a much better angle. Now this section down here is a rather awkward downhill section with just constant consecutive corners. It's all about lifting, using your throttle control. Again, you shouldn't need the brakes too much through here, or if at all. Again, just angle it right, bring yourself over to the right, hit the brakes nice and hard up over this left hand curb, and then try and aim yourself out wide. You can run plenty of this curb here, just don't go entirely over, especially over the white line, or else you will be disqualified from this test. We got this one in a 33.385. So next up we're going to move on to International A2, once again using a Corvette, but this time using the original C1 from 1958 for tricky consecutive corners too. I would go as far as saying this one is much harder than the first IA license test. The main reason is the Corvette itself is rather quite a clunky, classic, typically classic feeling car. So head over to the right, then it's all about balancing the brakes and the throttle. As you can see, I'm constantly going from one to the other, getting the front to turn in. Do not cut too much of this section here, or else you will be disqualified. Angle it for the right hander here. Once again, don't cut too much, or else you will be disqualified. As close to the wall as you can possibly get. Turn straight in on the right, brake rather quite heavily, lift off, let the car sort of slide out, and get ready to angle yourself for this left-hander, which is almost instant after the right-hander. Once again, slow the car down pretty standard, and then bring yourself out wide. Again, try not to run too much over the white line, or else you will be disqualified. You can pretty much just about get the entire car on it. Any slight chance over and you will get DSQ'd from it, so just be careful. A lot more difficult than the previous. Onto Master IA3 now with the Impreza, once again at urban tracks, and these are the bane of my existence. So once again, it's going to be very enclosed and we're going to get straight to it. Now, I would go as far as saying this one's much more wide open than the one we saw in, I think, A3, A4 with the Ferrari F12. So head out to the left. Now, you're looking for the 100 board here. Brake nice and hard and then bring the brakes off. Lift, turn the car in. You may get a lot of kick from the vehicle. I did, as you can see. Managed to keep it under control. In an ideal world, that would have been much smoother. Bring yourself out wide and then bring yourself over to the right. Once again, little feather of the brakes, again lifting off with the car, bring the throttle in nice and smooth, and then head over to this right hander here. Now you can be pretty much throttle controlling all the way through here. Bring it over to the right and get ready for this left hander. It's much more open than the rest of the track, but there is a chance that the car can run out wide, slap the barrier and end it right there at the end. Eventually bring the throttle in and cross the line and you should be able to get this one. Not too difficult and definitely more wide open than what we saw with the Ferrari F12 back in the National A license. So a little bit more leeway in terms of how far off you can run and such without slapping the wall. On to IA4 next, the SLR McLaren at the Nürburgring Nordschleife for corners with elevation changes number 1. Now this one, again, it's quite a tricky one, it's a bit of a lengthy one, but overall it's not too bad. Okay, so nice and heavy on the brakes, bring it over to the right and get ready for this really sharp left-hander. It's going to pretty much go around on itself, so be very careful here. Short shift to maintain as much traction as possible and then accelerate out. A little bit of a lift into the right-hander, bring yourself out nice and wide. I got a bit of a slip from the rear there, as you can see, and then your full throttle into the right-hander, a little bit of a lift through here, and then brake just as the kind of curb kind of curves around. Bring yourself over to the left, run yourself out wide once again. Short shift if you need to maintain as much traction as possible, and then once again head over to the left for the uphill section. You're going to be taking a fairly quite quick right-hander here. It's not as slow as it looks, but it is on that elevation, as you can see. Short shifting to maintain grip on exit, and then you are full throttle all the way down this section. Quite an open section, quite a fast section. You may need to lift on the left-hander here, as you can see I did. We got off the throttle, onto the brakes as heavy as possible. Definitely ran a little bit too deep there, but it does give us a, fair enough angle to get us a nice drive out with a bit of short shifting and up across the line. 51.362 for that one, with a gold target time of 51.510. Although the Nordschleife is quite a tricky circuit, it's all about muscle memory and just kind of remembering each individual sector. So let's move on to IA5. This was one that is going to be, once again, quite a pain to me. I'm definitely not very confident at Mount Panorama, and this time we're using the classic Skyline 2000 GTR, which is a bit of a twitchy old vehicle, to say the least, especially when it's fully upgraded. It'll just spin itself around constantly. Now, we are using the classic one here, so absolutely flat out, a little bit of a lift, just to maintain, as much traction as possible. Bring it over to the left, and here comes the tricky part. I can never ever get this really that right. So bring the brakes in, and then you're going to brake nice and hard. The car may try and get away from you. I recommend getting yourself up over the curb, brake as hard as possible, and try and get on the inside of this right-hander without completely clipping the wall, or else it is a DSQ. Cut into the left there, once again at the right, kind of cut over, short shifting to maintain traction and bring it out nice and wide. That section there is mainly made harder by the walls that surround it. Now, once again, really heavy on the brakes. You're going to be taking this left-hander here, down the gears into second, as you can see, and then we're going to be short shifting on exit. Once again, try not to clip the barriers. They're going to be the main issue for this run, that the car's not only just a little bit skittish at the rear and under brakes, that the barriers surround you are very easy to clip. We ended up with a 37.866 and the gold time was a 38.080. So not too difficult once you can nail it down, mainly made harder by the barriers. Onto IA6 next. This is one, once again, where it's more you're against the conditions and the track than you actually are the timer. I got a very unclean run here. If you want to make it easier, just put traction on. Obviously I kind of promised myself that I wouldn't. Run comfort soft. It's all about just keeping control of the vehicle. Again, you may run wide, you might miss exits. As you can see through this left-hander here, I made an absolute terrible job of it. Then into the right-hander, once again, they've got the rear end kicking out, only just keeping the car up on the curb there, or else that would have been a DSQ. Did manage to get this one first time. Again, very lenient on the timing for this one. You're mainly up against the conditions, so just be aware that the rear end of this thrower is going to want to get away from you. Just use short shifting, keep the car under control, and you should be able to get this one nice and easy. Even with a pretty scruffy run there, I managed to do a 41.3. Now, we've got the Super Formula car here, and it's going to be Master IA7 for tricky consecutive corners 3. This one isn't too bad once you realise just how much grip and downforce this vehicle's got. So right hand side, you want to brake at the 100 board and bring it across to the left. Now, it's quite an open exit, so bring it in and then run it out wide before putting the throttle in. You can pretty much skip across this left-hand curb here. Don't take too much of it, but try and take enough that it keeps the car nice and stable and lines you up well for this right-hander. Then it's all about braking and throttle control here before absolutely putting the power down on exit for these next two right-handers. You're pretty much flat out at this point. As you can see, flat out through the right-hander. Brake just slightly if you need to there, or lift. As you can see, I preferred lifting. I know some people will probably want to brake there. Again, we got this one by around about 5/10 to the gold there, so 27.3 for that one. Not too bad when you kind of realize how grippy these Super Formula vehicles are. Can be awkward once you kind of go from something like that classic Ferrari in the wet to the Super Formula. That's really where it's catching you out. Master IA8 next, tricky consecutive corners number 4 in the Lamborghini Countach at Grand Valley Highway 1. Not as bad as I expected it to be, but still it can be quite a tricky, I guess, section of this track. You're going through the tunnel, then you're going out to a sort of really tight left-right, and then you're pretty much flat out. So here we go. Check the left-hand side here. Braking at the 200 board, bring it down, bring it down the gears, bring it to the right, and then angle yourself so you can head over to the right hand side ready for the left-hander. You can chop up plenty of this, just do not touch those cones, so you can take plenty of the curb to sort of assist with your angle, and then instantly turn to the right, short shift to keep traction. Do not get on the dirt or over the line, or else it will disqualify you, so be as careful as possible with the exit, but nice, fast and smooth. Full throttle through here. Then you've got the left-hander. You may have to lift for this bit here, as you can see I did, to kick the rear end out, and then once again through the right hand I'm going to apply a dab of the brakes, get the rear end to kick out, and that'll give me a nice smooth angle to exit the tunnel and give us the gold. So 39.187, only just doing it. Quite an awkward section, mainly that left right, that can really catch you out, especially with the track limits. So did manage to get that one. Wasn't as difficult as I expected it to be. It's mainly just an old brutish supercar. Now we're going back to the snow for Snow Driving Expert for Master IA9, this time using the Celica. Now this time I recommend just keeping the torque at 40 to 60 or 35 to 65 at most. Now head over to the left, quite a bumpy section to begin with, get the rear end to kick out, and then use the power to kick yourself all the way out and give yourself a nice smooth angle. Get it out as wide as possible, drop the gear if you need the rear end to kick out more. Sometimes you might get too much grip. As you can see, the car started getting grip for me there. Short shifted just to get a nice drive out, down shifted once again to kick the rear out, because as you can see at the angle I'm going to end up ploughing into that barrier there. Into the left-hander, pretty much flat out. You want to be kicking the rear out. You may end up touching the snow banking. It's rather quite lenient, and then onto the brakes nice and hard. Go down the gears, kick the rear out once again, get into the left-hander, and then you need to be prepared that straight after this you're going to be going into the final corner, which is once again another tight right-hander. So we're in third gear here. We're then going to drop the gear, rotate the car the opposite way, get ourselves in nice and tight. There's quite a big wide runoff here, which I completely forgot about in my run. Short shifting to get as much grip as possible, bringing it out nice and wide, and then full throttle to the finish. This should give you the gold. It's again quite a lenient time. It doesn't need to be a pinpoint perfect run, and if you've done the circuit experience, which I have as well, you will pretty much know what to do. It's, you know, the same theory in terms of what we did for the gold circuit experience. So let's move on to the final test. Master IA10 final exam using a 962C. Back on the Nordschleife here, and once again it's kind of caught you out by giving you a previous license of being, you know, very little grip to something that's got a ton of downforce. So use that to your advantage. You need to be very much flat out, you know, very precise. So downhill section here, dab the brakes. If you don't, then there is a high chance you're going to plow straight into that gravel and disqualify yourself. Flat out once again, as you can see. Try not to lift. You want to be absolutely on the throttle all the way down here. The car can handle it. There's a ton of downforce. Chop up the curbs if you want to. Just don't run onto the grass, or else it's a DSQ. Left-hander here, bring the brakes in, lift, bring the throttle back in, and get ready for another, you know, more difficult braking section. Bring the brakes in over to the left, run it out nice and wide. Try and get yourself, you know, up towards the curb, ready to angle yourself for this left-hander here. Hard on the brakes. Downshift. I downshifted probably a little bit too much. Second gear should be enough. Use the banking of the corner to sort of assist you through. Full throttle once again. Slight little lift and brake here, as you can see. Downshift just to kick the rear end out so it doesn't run too wide. Back up to third, and then you are pretty much flat out. May require a little bit of throttle, and then absolutely flat out across the finish. Can be quite awkward, but again, it's all about trying to remember that you've gone from a car that was on the snow to one that has got a ton of downforce. So use that to your advantage. Once you get it, you should get it in plenty enough time, and that's going to complete International A license. So with that done and dusted, let's head over to the rewards. So as per usual, for all of the bronze rewards, I guess, or all of the bronze medals, you're going to be rewarded with the roulette ticket as usual, this time in the form of a 5-star roulette ticket. You know, a fairly decent reward. You can get some decent rewards from that ticket as well. I think I ended up with something like 500k for this one. Then obviously the car reward is going to be sort of in the theme that these have always been, that you end up getting the final exam vehicle. So for this one, we're going to be receiving the Porsche Porsche 962C, which in my opinion is a fantastic reward. It's a great car, saves you a ton of money if you haven't already got one, and in all honesty it is just a full-blown legendary Group C race car. Okay, so on to Master S1, which is obviously a one-lap time attack, this time using the brand new Civic Type R FL5 at Mount Panorama. This one definitely took me longer than all of the others to do, just because of how little confidence I have in myself at Mount Panorama. It's a tricky, long track, and those barriers can absolutely ruin a run in literal seconds. You can be flat out and then boom, your run's gone. So brake at the 100 board on the right, bring the car down the gears, short shift to maintain traction, bring it out nice and wide. You can run plenty of that curb. I just took a little bit too much there and the car started to kick out. Then flat out up the straight. This section, don't really need to take you through it. Absolutely full throttle all the way up until you start seeing the boards on the left. Now check over to the left and look for the 100 board. So there it is. Brake nice and hard, go down the gears, second short shift to third to maintain traction, and once again run it out nice and wide towards the curbs on your left. Up the gears, and now you're going to go uphill into the mountain. So now bring it over to the left. This is where I'm going to slow it down because it can be quite an awkward section. Lift and then go down the gears, ready for this where it sort of tightens up on the left. Bring it in nice and close to the barrier, and then you're going to short shift up to maintain as much traction as possible. Front wheel drive car, this one, the worst thing you want to do is spin up those front tires. So into the right hander, bring it out nice and wide. You may need to lift off the throttle here and brake just slightly, so into the right hander as close to the wall as possible and get a nice angle ready for the left hander. So on the throttle you should have plenty of time here to be able to do this. Head over to the left, now flat out, and then you're going to be lifting, braking, let the car rotate a little bit, and then back out wide, ready for this left-hander here. Now I recommend a slight touch of the brakes into this left-hander just to ensure that you don't run onto the grass. And now here comes perhaps the most difficult part of the entire run. I can never get it right here. So full throttle, down the brakes. Again, it's going to be very, very sketchy. You want to try and get up on that curb, and hopefully the car won't break away or, you know, gather grip and just plow yourself into the wall. As close to the right hand barrier as possible. Into the left hander, you can try and chop up as much of that as possible without hitting the barrier. Same once again for the right hander, and then you're going to be absolutely flat out on exit before beginning to lift for this right hander down here. So get ready for it. Here we go. Right hander, we're going to lift, let the car go over to the right hand side, brake really hard, go down the gears, get it into around about second gear. Don't go into first, or I just wouldn't advise it. Close to the left hand barrier as possible, out nice and wide, full acceleration. Now that's the hardest part done. You're absolutely flat out down here, down the main straight. Again, like I said, just kind of harking back to the barriers there. Be as close to them as possible, that it gives you a good angle, but be as careful as possible because I had plenty of my runs ruined for this one. So flat out down the straight, you've got the right hander here, bring it out nice and wide. You can run onto the line there, lift, and then brake at the 200 board as hard as possible. You're going from absolutely flat out to really getting down the gears. Short shift to third up over the curb. You know, try and be as full throttle as possible. Just lift if you need to. Try and bring it out nice and wide. Then head over to the right. Check for the boards once again. I recommend the 100 board. Go down the gears. Get it into second. Up over the curb. Short shift on exit to maintain your traction. And that should bring you up across the line and get you the gold medal. Definitely the toughest one of the bunch in my opinion. Ended up finishing with a 28.5 with a gold time of a 29.190. So, you know, managed to do it by quite a bit, but it did take me a good few runs. On to Master S2 next. This was one that I got first time. Really not too difficult, this one. Overall, I would say this one looks harder than it actually is, considering we've got a classic Porsche 911 Turbo running on a rallycross track. So dirt tyres obviously for this one, so the handling is going to be a little bit awkward. We're actually going to have a standing start, not a rolling for this one. Get yourself underway. Now again, you're not going to really get onto the main track until you've completed this left-hander. Then you want to be absolutely full throttle out of the corner and get ready for this sharp right-hander here. You're going to go onto the dirt, so brake as much as possible. Again, it's going to be a lot more loose feeling here. Again, you just kind of want to rotate the rear of the car out. Again, I just couldn't quite get it out too much. We don't obviously have a torque distributor for this car. Up to second to short shift and maintain traction on exit. Angle it towards the left. You've got the jump here now. Just be, you know, careful as possible. You want to be rather quite fast, but lift off on the actual jump itself as close to this right hand barrier as possible before whipping it back to the left. Downshift to help you sort of whip the rear out if you need to. Again, I just couldn't quite get it out as close to that left hand barrier as possible and give yourself a nice exit angle. Try not to go over the line. I believe it does disqualify you there, so just be very mindful of the track limits on the exit. Flat out here, look at the boards on the right. It's the second to last board that you want to be braking at. I'm going to kick it down to first just to try and get that rear end to brake into the right hander, chop up that curb, chop up the left here. Just try not to go too much, or actually may end up into that sort of, you know, I guess tyre stacks into the left hander. Bring it down the gears, kick it out if you can. I just could not get the rear end of this car to kick out, and that's going to complete your lap. So we did it in a 46.301, gold time of a 46.460. So in the end we did get this one relatively easily, got it first go. Definitely recommend trying to kick the rear end out more if you can. Let's move into Master S3 next. Again, another one that looks a bit more awkward than it actually is. We're using obviously the classic Honda RA272 at the no chicane layout to Barcelona. So the main thing here, I recommend putting the brake bias actually to the front. If you put it too far to the rear, you'll notice that the rear end will just kick out constantly under brakes, and that's just never a good thing in this car. It's going to kick out enough already. So on the left hand side, you want this little light stack here as your braking marker. Bring the cars down the gears and then angle it up onto this curb here. As you can see, losing traction already, but short shifting to maintain as much as possible. Up over the left hand curb, and then you're going to be having to use your throttle control in the right hand sector here. So this sweeping right hander goes on for absolutely ever. Again, just use throttle control and then full throttle exit, getting ready for the next right hander, which is kind of the same but just kind of a little bit shorter. So get ready for it, brake just before the bridge, bring it down the gears. You don't want to bring it down, you know, too quickly, or actually going to end up with the rear end kicking out. Short shifting to maintain traction, bring it out wide, bring it over to the right, brake nice and heavy for this left hander, much more sharper than the previous two turns that we've just done. Into second gear, up over the curb and accelerate downhill, ready for this left hand section here. So here we go, left hander, brake just before the curb begins, bring the car across to the left hand side, try and take as much curb as possible to give yourself a nice smooth angle upwards. Again, run this curb if you need to, up the gears to maintain traction, and now you've got an uphill blind right hander. This one can catch you out. It's going to catch me out here actually, so it's definitely not a perfect run. So down into third, up over the curb. Again, the rear end's going to kick out, and this is where it gets a little bit scruffy, but we do manage to just keep it in. Again, you don't want all of the car on the green section, as I believe that is a DSQ. Up the gears, trying to maintain traction. Right hand side here, you want to begin to brake between the 150 and 100 board, bring it down the gears, bring it over to the left hand side. We're going to kick it into first just to get the rear end to sort of break away. Short shift up to second to maintain traction. Nice wide exit here. Again, we want to run it nice and wide and angle it for this left hand curb here. Take a little bit of curb and get a nice angle for the right hander. Downshift, and then it's all about throttle control until you exit the corner. Now, full throttle through this section. You've got a no chicane layout, so we're going to lift, tap the brakes, bring it out nice and wide, run as much of the curb as possible, and then brake kind of at the middle point of that left hand strip. Bring the car in, up over the curb, and then try and get a nice clean exit to bring us up across the line. So we're going to run a chunk of curb once again. You can really, you know, use a lot of the curbs to your advantage here, and then we're going to accelerate across the line for a 51.727 with a gold target time of a 151.900. So managing to get this one second time around. Again, I was fairly close to first. So on to S4, another one that looks much more awkward than it actually is, mainly just due to the car that we're using. So we've got the XJ220 at Grand Valley Highway 1 on the full layout. Now this car can be fairly awkward to drive, but overall it is relatively easy once you kind of know how to drive it. Short shifting works very, very well with the turbo that's on this vehicle. So into the left hander, as you can see, we're going to lift and dab the brakes to ensure that it doesn't run wide. Then really hard on the brakes, down the gears, and head towards the right hand side here. As you can see, we go as low as first, but we are going to end up running out fairly too wide. So as you can see, it's a little bit of an awkward one to get, especially in this car, but this is going to give us a nice run into this left hand section here. So short shifting to maintain the traction, up to the left hander. Now it's not too difficult around here. You may have to just lift at times. As you can see, we're going to dab the brakes, lift, throttle throttle control through the right-hander, just get onto the line without just breaking that DSQ barrier there, and then heavy onto the brakes around about the 400 marker. Bring it out nice and wide, down the gears, into the right-hander. The rear end is going to try and break traction, but we're going to use short shifting to get as much power as possible from the turbo. So here we go, up the gears, bringing it out nice and wide, and then heading over to the right-hand side of the track. So even I find it quite difficult here. It's really a very awkward corner. So we went down a gear, down again, and then we're trying to angle the front of the car to go into the left, into the right. Once again, keeping it in second, braking nice and hard for this right-hander here. You can chop up quite a bit of it, but try not to do too much, right? So there is the risk of obviously hitting that cliffside. Into the left-hander, we're once again going to downshift, and then we're going to short shift and use the turbo to pull us along. So there we go, nice early shift, full throttle now, and then you're going to go into the left-hander. So watch the boards on the right. You are looking for that 200 board. Bring it down once again, you know, kind of brake, lift off the throttle and such, and then slowly bring it back in. You've got a right-hander here, but it's going to be much more open than the left-hander. You're then going to begin your run over the bridge. So full throttle at this point, absolutely flat out, getting ready to keep an eye on the markers on the left-hand side. So here we go. We're going to brake at the 300. Bring it down the gears, and then once again we've got another kind of awkward right-hander. It's sort of uphill through the tunnel, can really catch you out if you're not, you know, doing it quite well enough. It can be very, very awkward. So keeping it to the inside, and then we're going to begin to angle the car to the left, because you've got a left-right section here. Keeping it in first gear. You want to chop as much as possible without touching those bollards there. That's it's a DSQ. Keeping it in first gear for the right-hander, and then we're going to short shift and bring it out nice and wide for a very, very quick run through here. So right-hander, as you can see, flat out through there. You may need to lift on the left-hander here, so just keep an eye on it. There we go, a little bit of a lift. Once again for the right-hander, lifting again, just to kind of get the car pointing at the right angle, and then absolutely flat out to the finish. So the XJ220 reacts very, very well to short shifting. You get a ton of power even in high gears, meaning that you can keep plenty of traction. Only just getting it, but definitely not as awkward as it looks originally. 203.419 for our gold time there, 203.480 for the target time. So let's go on to the snow for our off-road master license race, or one lap challenge. This time using the 205 Turbo 16 around the brand new track Lake Louise on its long layout. So if you've already done the circuit experience, this one you should kind of know what you're in for. Now I recommend kind of fiddling around with the torque distribution around about 30 to 70 to 35 to 65. Put the brake bias at the rear to about 2. This will allow you to get the rear end to kick out under braking. So brake at the final board, take it out nice and wide, and then short shift to maintain traction and get a nice run out of turn 1. Now this is where it's going to get a little bit more awkward. So flat out until you get to the right-hander, downshift again for the left-hander, get the rear to kick out, and then short shift to maintain traction. Bring it out nice and wide, and then you are full throttle over this bumpy section, and now it's going to get really, really awkward. This section of the track is probably the most difficult. This first right-hander being the main culprit. So you want to bring it kind of inside and then back outside, but you want the rear end to be kicking out. We're going to only just manage it, as you can see, going down the gears to get the rear end to kick out. We've got the brake bias set to the rear to once again kick that rear end out. We're then going to go down the gears and then up the gears to maintain traction. I did it slightly a touch too early, so we didn't get necessarily the best angle, but it did work for us. Once again, down the gears to kick the rear out, and then up the gears once again for this left-hander. Very, very awkward section that. I'd say it's definitely the most difficult part of the entire track. Now you've got a very bumpy section, so once again just be mindful that the car's going to be moving around a lot before lining it up for this part here. Another sweeping right-hander here where you want to bring it out as wide as possible and then back in to angle up for another corner. So once again we're going to kick the rear out, we're going to be as sideways as possible. Again, I short shifted just that touch too early, and that's going to bring the car in and maintain its grip. Again, far too much inwards here. I recommend going out a little bit wider and then back in, and this is going to kind of mess up our run here. So as you can see, we're going to go out a little bit too wide here, but we are going to short shift to maintain traction and keep us away from the barrier. into the left-hander as flat out as possible with a few slight lifts, maybe, you know, scraping that bank in there. Onto the brakes hard for this left-hander. Again, you're going to kick the rear out and then prepare yourself for the right-hander here for the final corner. Much more open on exit, so just bring it down the gears and then work your way up through the gears to get the traction and get a nice pull away. As you can see, I've gone down to 45 to 55 there. Just kind of messing around with it, you know, just trying to ensure that I've got the best drive away as possible. 141.698 for our gold there. The target time very close to it with a 141.720. Only just getting that one, but if you've done the circuit experience in the RCZ, then you pretty much know what to expect. Onto something different now. We've got the 911 GT1, the road going version for Master S6 around Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. So this one can be slightly awkward. We've again gone from a car that's got pretty much no grip to a, you know, road car that's got plenty of it. To be honest, it's much more grippy than I expected it to be. So over to the left hand side here, once again just waiting for it to sort of break away onto the tarmac, bring the car on the brakes and then try and angle it, you know, as close to the inside as possible. Now I couldn't get the car to turn in and it is going to run out wide. However, we are going to manage to keep the traction there with short shifting and manage to get a run up the hill. Head towards the left and get ready to do a nice big cut across the curb at the top right. So here we go. Down the gears, we're then going to cut up over this curb here. Again, it's quite lenient with how much you can cut before it will disqualify. You can pretty much take the whole thing. Then into this section, keep it in sort of third, fourth gear, use throttle control once again to kind of help your way down the hill. Again, it's very, very awkward because it's so blind at first. Again, we're just going to use the throttle, get ourselves up onto the curbs and then prepare for this tight left-hander here. So onto the brakes as the curb begins, down the gears, up over the curb on the left and then bring it out nice and wide, using short shifting to maintain as much traction as possible. After that section, very, very awkward. I say it's the most difficult part of the entire track. Flat out into the right-hander, brake where the shadow begins, bring it into the left, short shift once again just to maintain traction, out nice and wide and then really hard onto the brakes, get it up over the curb, angle it back out wide, and then you've got a very, very long straight here where you're going to just work your way up through the gears. But just be aware, there is a chance that the left-hander at the bottom can catch you out because you're going absolutely flat out to then really heavy braking. I'm going to try and slow it down just to kind of talk you through this section. So into the right-hander, you're looking at just before this the first board on your right to brake very, very heavily. As long as you do it spot on, you should be able to angle yourself into this left-hander, get up on the curb and then short shift to maintain traction. Once again, up over the right-hand curb and take it out nice and wide. You can run plenty of the outside curb here. Now you want to be bringing the throttle in, up over the blind hill there, into the right-hander, flat out. You may need to lift at the end here. As you're going to see, I'm going to go so quick that I end up running wide, but we do manage to cross the line with a 127.534 with a gold target time of a 127.700. So once again, only just, but again, it's kind of catching you out going from a very slippy surface to a very grip heavy car that, whilst it can sort of get away from you, does actually have more grip than you expect. So now for the one that gave me the most trouble of them all, Master S7 with the Cobra Daytona Coupe from 64 at Watkins Glen Long Course. Now I absolutely love Watkins Glen. It's perhaps my favorite track in the entirety of the game. The main thing here is just you've kind of gone from a very modern fast car to a very classic fast car. It's rather quite awkward how you're going to run it. So go down the brakes, go down the gears onto the brakes, up onto the curb here, and you may need to use throttle control as you go up the hill into the right left section. So you want to be as fast but as smooth as possible. So as you're going to see, we're going to lift slightly there just to get the car to turn inwards. Absolutely flat out through this section. You may or may not need to lift. As you can see, I got the angle just right so that I didn't need to lift. And now you've got this part here. This is where it can get awkward. So we're going to brake at the 500 board. We're going to angle the car up over the curb. You can take plenty of curb without it disqualifying you. Onto this curb here, down the gears to get the front pointing towards the left, then once again up over this curb on the left, up over the curb on the right, and then we're going to have this very long sweeping right-hander. So keeping it in second gear here, we're going to drop it to first just to get the front to turn in, and then we're going to begin working our way up the gears on exit. So here we go, downhill braking section here, can catch you off guard, so get ready for this one. Brake at the 200 board, bring it down to first, get the car to turn in, clip the curb here and then angle it out nice and wide, up the gears once again, and then watch for the boards on the left. So here we go, second board, heavy on the brakes, down the gears into first, again just using throttle control before bringing the throttle in fully on exit. Little bit of a slip of the vehicle there, so now we're going to go onto this straight here, uphill, and then it's going to kind of, you know, bring us into this tight right hander. Look for the boards on the left. I recommend the 200 board to bring the brakes in. A little bit early there from me, into first gear, into the apex, and then back out wide, ready to head over to the right for this blind left-hander. It can catch you out here. You're going to look for the boards on the right, brake at the second one, down to first, bring it in nice and tight, and then back out wide for a nice run into this left-hand section. So again, look for the boards, brake at 200, point the car towards the left and bring it out nice and wide, and then head over to the left hand side for the final right hander. Once again on the brakes, into the right hander, run it out nice and wide here. I was a bit over cautious there, where you can really run up onto that curb. As long as you don't touch the barrier, you should be all good. And that's going to complete the Watkins Glen lap. We did it as a 2:05.682, target time of a 2:06.250. So that one definitely gave me the most problems of all of them. I would certainly say out of all of them, that is the one that is perhaps going to try and catch you out. Now onto Spa. This one's rather quite lenient. It gives you a nice quick Group 2 vehicle, so plenty of grip here once again, just making this one overall a much easier time. Okay, so into turn 1 is going to be relatively easy. So you're going to start off on the straight and prepare yourself for turn 1. Head over to the left, look for the board on the left there, the 100 board, brake, turn in, lift, and then start bringing the throttle in. Try not to get too much on the curb like I did there, right? So there's a chance that the car's going to bog down and start spinning at the rears. Again, absolutely flat out for this section, get the angle right. So chop the curb, chop it once again. You may need to lift if you know, if you've not got the angle just quite right, but you can take that absolutely flat out. Then flat out all the way down the straight. You're hitting some serious speed now, and get ready for this right hander. So I'm going to slow it down at this section in a minute. We've got the curb on the left as the braking point, and then you're going to go just kind of down the gears, back up the gears into third, maintain third gear, into the right hander, up over the curb, up to fourth, up the curb there, and then get ready for this part here. So look for the curb on your left and use that as a braking marker. Down the gears, as you can see, bringing it as far down as the first gear, and then working our way back up to maintain as much grip as possible. I recommend exiting in third, bring it out to the left, then back out to the right, ready for this left hander. Once again, dab of the brakes, angle it just right, get towards the apex, and then back out wide. Don't take too much curb like I did here, or else the car will start doing that and bog down. It can lead to the rear end breaking away and you spinning. Look for the braking marker on the right, which is the 50 board. Downshift, absolutely flat out with some throttle control mixed in, and then a massive flat out exit here, nice and wide. Bring it over to the left once again. Look for the curb here, brake. It can really catch you out. Just brake a bit sooner if you don't feel like you're going to make it. As you can see, we're going to dip down to first and then back up the gears to maintain the traction. You've got a left-hander straight after, so bring it into the inside of the corner and then run it out wide. Once again, don't take too much curb on exit, or as there is a chance that you're going to bog down or you're going to spin the car out. Over to the left, a brake at the start of the curb, down to first to kind of get the front end turned in, and then short shift upwards. Get out nice and wide on this curb. As long as you're not on the green, you should be absolutely fine. Angle it over to the right hand side, little bit of a lift there, and then absolutely full throttle now all the way up until the final right left. So flat out here, work your way through the gears, through this left hander. Don't lift, get it out nice and wide, and once again you may have to lift, or you can take it flat out there. Try and get the angle perfect and you'll be absolutely golden for that bit. Brake at the board there at the 150, nice and straight in the braking, down into first if you need to, get yourself up over the curb, short shift if you want to maintain traction there, but I'm going to keep it in first. Head over to the left, chop the curb up once again, and I'm going to do the short shift there, taking it out nice and wide once again, trying to avoid the green so we don't bog down or spin, and across the line for a 2:08.899. Now that was definitely not a perfect lap. There was some rather scruffy sections there, but we did manage to come away with it. Overall, the grip of that car is great, and now we're going to go into, once again, a very, very awkward one. This time we've got the Aston Martin Valkyrie at the Red Bull Ring. We had this when the car got released as a online time trial, so if you've done that, you probably know what to expect here. However, this car can be very, very sketchy. I'm just going to say that now. Okay, so this car does feature overtake, and I recommend being on it pretty much all the time in terms of these straight sections. Head over to the left and brake nice and early. This car may or may not stop. Like I said, it can feel very, very sketchy on these sport soft tyres. Angle it over to the right, chop up the curb, and then just be very gentle on putting the throttle down. You put too much on, there's a chance it's going to just absolutely fly off. On the overtake here, as you can see, work your way up the gears and just absolutely be flat out. Now over to the left, you want to brake nice and early because you're hitting over nearly 200 miles an hour. I recommend braking at the curb, work your way down the gears and then angle it to the right hander here. Get yourself up over the curb, and this is where the car just seemed to constantly be very awkward for me. So we're going to put the throttle down fully and we're going to start getting on the overtake button. Now, I don't recommend doing it too early because there is a chance the car's going to bog down, but even when I did it a little bit later, the car still then started to, lose its revs and then pick it back up. Once again, we're upwards of nearly 200. Brake at the curb on the left, down the gears into the right hander, up over the curb, and then short shift to maintain traction. There is a chance this car's going to try and kick out and absolutely batter you. Over to the right hand side, once again braking just before the 50. Work your way down the gears and try and give yourself a nice angle here. As you can see, I am constantly fighting this car. It just doesn't perform that well on these street tires. Up over the curb and then bring the throttle in before braking, ready for this left-hander here. So nice dab of the brakes, just balance the brakes and the throttle, let the car turn in, and then you're going to be full throttle out. Once again, I don't recommend being too much on the overtake. There is the risk that it's just going to cause your car to fly off, but try and bring it in as much as possible. Brake at the beginning of the curb once again, get up on the curb, bring it over to the right-hand side, and then get ready to angle yourself for the final few corners. So up over the curb, once again, head over to the wide section, onto the curb and brake, and then you're going to try and chop up as much of this curb as possible without getting DSQ'd, just kind of touching the sausage curb there, and then onto the overtake button to power yourself up across the line. Again, if you've done the online time trial previous when this car first got released, you kind of know what to expect. A 122.890 for that one, and that is going to give us our final license test now with the McLaren MP4-4 at Suzuka circuit. So here we go. This is the final exam of the bunch. Finally, we're getting around to it, and this is obviously going to be our car reward as well. This one, I would say, is much easier than what we saw from the previous Super license. There's no wet track or anything like that. It is just using this classic F1 car around Suzuka. So it's actually going to start you way before you begin your lap, so feel free to angle this up properly. I'm going to get a bit of a slip here, so just be as careful as possible. I recommend actually arching it out wide to give yourself more speed as you go down the main straight. Don't cut inside, you'll lose too much speed and kind of too much time. So onto the lap, here we go. Check out the right hand side here. We're going to just brake at the 50 board, angle it to the inside, back to the outside, and then brake, bring the brakes in gently, and then over to the right hand side once again. Then on exit, we're going to run it out nice and wide. You can take plenty of that curb if you need to. Now we're going to get into the S's. It's not as bad as you think, so we're going to downshift into third, just maintain third, drop to second if we need to, just to get the car pointing in the right way. As you can see, third the entire time. This is where I recommend the downshift, so into second, back up to third to short shift and maintain traction. Into the left-hander, absolutely flat out on exit. Try and angle it nice and wide so you cut back into the left-hand side here. Head over to the left, watch the boards on the left here, brake just before the 50. Cut up that curb there, out nice and wide, ready for the next right-hander. Brake as the curb sort of ends, angle it in second gear, back out wide, and then full throttle up the hill, ready for the hairpin. This is where it can get very, very awkward. So full throttle, over to the right, and then brake as the curb ends. Nice and hard on the brakes. Bring it down the gears into first gear. As you can see the car trying to slip away there. We're then going to short shift. I short shifted a little bit too early, I believe, and you can try and angle it out as wide as you want as well. We're going to then short shift up the gears and then absolutely flat out through here. No need to lift. Getting ready for the next few left-handers just up the road. So flat out, then brake at the just after the 100 board, bring it into the left, up over the curb, then downshift to get that angle right, over this left-hander here, and then back out wide once again. Absolutely flat out through this section. you are not going to be touching them brakes until the right left at the end of the lap. So all the way up, absolutely flat out through the left hander here. You don't need to lift, you don't need to brake. Take it out nice and wide, angle it back to the left, and then brake at the 150 board just before the 100 into the right hander. You can chop up these curves once again into first gear, into the left hander, and then get ready because you can take a ton of time away here. So short shift into second, keep it all the way to the right. We get a bit of a slip there. We're just working our way up through the gears to maintain traction, and keep as close to the right hand barrier as possible, and you should be able to get this one. Took me, I think, 2 goes to get this one done in the end, a 143.754, and that completes all of the master license challenges. In terms of the rewards, let's move on to them. We're going to get a 6-star roulette ticket. Once again, for all bronze, you're going to be receiving a roulette ticket. I think I got around about 1 million credits off of this one, so really not too shabby just for even getting the bronze. And then obviously, in terms of the gold medal gold medal reward, we're going to receive the typical final exam vehicle, this time being the very legendary McLaren MP4-4. This one's worth a fortune. If you've already got one, I think it sells for upwards of like 8 million credits if you do want to, you know, get rid of your duplicates and stuff. Very much a worthy reward. So there we go, finally all of the master licenses crammed into one single handy guide. Massive thank you for watching. Hopefully this guide does help you out, and hopefully it saves you through having to go through multiple separate videos. Anyway, that's it from me today. Take care guys, peace.